Some storms don't arrive to tear your life apart. Sometimes they come to shake you awake. Think about that for a moment. Maybe you've been asking yourself why nothing seems to be working out yet. You followed the advice everyone gave you, didn't you? You tried to be kind without appearing too available, warm without being overwhelming. You smiled without looking needy. You dressed to be noticed while secretly hoping someone would truly see your heart. You held back. You waited patiently. Maybe you were careful about who you gave yourself to. Or maybe you opened your heart and your body, believing this time it would finally become something real. Yet somehow you still felt overlooked, like a beautiful melody no one stopped long enough to hear. Now you're left asking yourself questions that quietly hurt. Am I too emotional? Too intense? Too gentle? Too late? Is something wrong with me? Let me tell you something with complete certainty. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not damaged. You are not falling behind. You're simply living through a season that very few people understand. It's the season where the outside becomes still because your soul is preparing to speak. Most people mistake silence for failure. They'll assume you're lonely, unwanted, or doing something wrong. But what if your quiet season isn't rejection at all? What if it's direction? What if your soul is gently saying, not yet, not this person, not this path? The truth is, nobody prepared us for this. Instead, we were handed a list of shortcuts. Be more attractive, stay easygoing, flirt, but don't get attached. Be desirable, but never too serious. We were told that if we played the game correctly, love would eventually arrive. But real love doesn't walk into a life that's disconnected from itself. Picture a garden in the middle of winter. Everything looks lifeless. The trees stand bare. The ground feels frozen. Yet beneath the surface, life is quietly growing. Roots are reaching deeper. Seeds are preparing for their moment. That's exactly where you are. You're not falling behind. You're building beneath the surface. And that hidden growth makes people uncomfortable. A woman who no longer chases, begs, or settles for shallow attention becomes powerful. She seems mysterious, difficult to reach, almost intimidating. Not because she's emotionally closed, but because she's finally protecting her own light instead of handing everyone the flame. So if you're in a season where you're choosing not to give your body away, where you're not rushing from one relationship to another, where no one seems to be choosing you, don't see it as punishment. See it as preparation. A woman who learns to stand peacefully in her own silence becomes impossible to ignore when it's finally time for her to move. Your worth has never depended on being chosen. It has never depended on a text message, attention, or someone else's approval. What you truly need is to hear your own voice again. That only happens when the noise fades and you stop filling every empty space with someone else's validation. Stay with me, my friends, because what comes next isn't about tricks, games, or seduction. It's about waking up to who you really are. We're going beneath the surface. We're choosing honesty over appearances, and we're not leaving any part of you behind. If these words are already speaking to your heart, take a second to support Love by Matt. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Not just to support this community, but as a promise to yourself that you're ready to step into the person you're becoming. You're not late. You're at the beginning. And every powerful transformation starts exactly there. Have you ever felt invisible? That quiet pain of being overlooked can be one of life's deepest wounds. But remember this, a diamond isn't valuable because everyone notices it. It's valuable because it survives the kind of pressure that destroys everything else. If you've ever walked into a room and felt unseen, if you've shared your joy without anyone reflecting it back, watched others find love while you kept waiting, then this is for you. You invested in yourself. You worked on your healing, your confidence, your mindset, your boundaries. You followed the advice from books, podcasts, friends, and family. You did everything you were told would make love appear, and still you felt forgotten. Eventually, those silent disappointments begin asking painful questions. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I'm not enough. maybe love simply wasn't meant for someone like me. But here's the truth no one ever bothered to tell you. You were never created to fade into the background of someone else's story. You're the kind of presence people only recognize when they're mature enough to appreciate something real. Imagine a lighthouse standing strong through a violent storm. It doesn't dim its light because passing ships don't stop. It doesn't question its purpose because no one arrived today. It keeps shining because its job was never to chase anyone. Its purpose is to guide those who are truly ready. If you've been feeling invisible, it isn't because you're lacking something. It's because you were never meant to live on the surface. You were made for depth, authenticity, and real connection. Not everyone is prepared to meet a woman who no longer depends on outside approval because she's finally learning to value herself. Maybe part of you is still asking, what if nobody ever chooses me? What if being independent means I'll always end up alone? What if I already missed my opportunity? You haven't missed anything. You've simply grown beyond the version of love that would have found the old you. You're not invisible. You're valuable. And valuable things aren't rushed into the spotlight before their time. You're not behind, you're being shaped. You're not forgotten, you're being protected. If this season of being overlooked feels this meaningful, imagine what happens when the people who truly belong in your life finally recognize your worth. Stay with me, my friends, because now we're stepping into what happens when you stop performing for acceptance and finally begin listening to your own soul. There comes a moment when everything quietly changes. You don't explode. You don't post emotional messages hoping someone notices. You don't even grieve the way you once did. Instead, something inside you becomes calm. You stop replying to late-night messages from people who only wanted temporary access to your life. You stop obsessing over every outfit, every text, every little detail that once determined your confidence. You stop trying to force connections with people who only offer half the effort you deserve. Then something interesting happens. Your world begins to change. People start asking if you're okay. They tell you that you used to be more fun, that you should put yourself back out there. What they often mean is that your peace makes them uncomfortable because you're no longer performing the role they expected from you. But this wasn't some clever dating strategy. This was your soul reclaiming control. Your mind and body finally reached the point where they refused to keep auditioning for love or settling for scraps of attention. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." That's exactly what's happening. Your quiet withdrawal isn't giving up, it's waking up. You didn't stop believing in love, you stopped accepting less than you deserve. You didn't stop making an effort. You stopped bending yourself into someone else's expectations. You stepped away, not to hide from life, but to reconnect with yourself. Yes, there will be lonely moments. You'll scroll through pictures of couples and wonder if everyone else has figured life out before you. You'll question whether being chosen is still the goal and whether you're somehow falling behind. But listen carefully. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not falling apart. You're ending a pattern that may have controlled you for years. The cycle stops with you. You're no longer dependent on outside validation to tell you you're worthy. You're learning to appreciate yourself even when nobody is applauding. That kind of confidence unsettles people. Because a woman who no longer needs approval becomes free to make decisions from wisdom instead of fear. Keep going with me, my friends, because the silence is about to become even deeper. Ahead is the place where you meet the version of yourself that no relationship, no compliment, and no outside approval could ever create. The most challenging reflection you'll ever face isn't the one staring back from a mirror. It's the one revealed in complete silence when nobody else is watching. Think about that for a moment, because when the distractions disappear, the messages slow down, the attention fades, and the noise finally settles, that's when your true voice begins to speak. And when that voice finally shows up, it isn't always gentle. It's the one that speaks in the middle of the night, asking questions you've tried to avoid. Why didn't he choose me? What did she have that I didn't? Was I too much, or was I never enough? Your mind replays old conversations, unanswered messages, and the moments when you gave more of yourself than you should have, hoping someone would finally make you feel seen. Now that there's no one left to impress, you're sitting alone with those questions. But here's what most people never explain. That voice isn't there to hurt you. It's there to wake you up. It's not your weakness speaking. It's the part of you that has been ignored for far too long. For years, you learned to be easygoing, desirable, low maintenance, and unbothered. In the process, the real you became quieter. That part of you isn't broken. She's finally coming back. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we pushed away so we could fit in. The version of you that was told she was too emotional, too intense, too honest, too much. But your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your guide. It's holding on to the dreams, standards, and desires you buried while trying to become acceptable to everyone else. I won't pretend this part is easy, because once you stop blaming other people for not choosing you, you're forced to face the times you handed away your own value, hoping someone else would return it. Don't run from that realization. That's where real change begins. Not through another relationship, not through another conversation. Right here in the quiet with yourself. Maybe you're afraid that if you go that deep, you'll never be the same again. That's exactly the point. The woman who has the courage to face every hidden part of herself doesn't simply attract healthier love. She becomes someone capable of giving and receiving it. Stay with me, my friends, because now we're moving into an even more vulnerable place. The part of you that misses connection so deeply, it almost convinces you to settle for the wrong kind again. Here's something that can be hard to admit. Sometimes you don't miss the person. You miss the version of yourself who felt wanted, even if that feeling was built on false hope. Take a moment with that. We all say we want genuine love, yet there are moments when we find ourselves longing for the counterfeit version. The late-night messages from someone who never truly cared about your heart, but still made your phone light up. The flirting that had no future, but temporarily filled the emptiness. The almost relationship that gave you enough hope to stay, but never enough security to feel safe. When life becomes quiet, that emptiness slowly returns. You miss being held, even by someone who only valued your appearance. You miss hearing from someone, even if they only reached out when it suited them. You miss feeling chosen, even by someone who never planned to stay. Listen carefully. Missing the wrong love doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. We were created for connection. And a lonely heart doesn't always separate truth from temporary comfort. But what you're truly grieving isn't that person. You're grieving the feeling of being wanted. You're grieving the illusion that someone's attention proved your worth. That ache isn't only loneliness, it's withdrawal. Deep down, you don't want him back. You want yourself back. You miss the version of you who didn't overanalyze every message, the version who wasn't constantly trying to decode mixed signals, the version who didn't shrink herself just to keep someone's interest. What you're really craving isn't another relationship. You're longing to return to your own wholeness. Once you fully recognize your own value, not borrowed value, but real value, you'll never be satisfied with crumbs pretending to be love again. You'll stop chasing relationships that almost feel right and start making space for one that meets you as a complete woman, instead of trying to complete you. Stay with me, my friends, because we're entering the most sacred part of this journey, the place where the hunger begins to disappear and quiet strength takes its place. People may call this season empty. They may think it's a drought. But what if this dry season was exactly what your soul needed? What if heaven allowed the rain to stop so your roots would finally grow deeper instead of teaching you to chase every passing cloud? Think about that. What you're experiencing isn't simply a lonely chapter or a temporary pause. It's a sacred season of waiting, a quiet responsibility that the world rarely understands, rarely celebrates, and almost never applauds. You didn't choose this path overnight. You didn't wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to live this way now. It wasn't a trend or some challenge you committed to. Life slowly led you here, one heartbreak after another, one unanswered message after another, one almost relationship after another, where you were close enough to feel hope, but never truly valued. Now you're here. The room is quiet. Your heart is still healing. And on certain nights, you wonder if what you're feeling is strength or simply sadness wearing a stronger face. Let's be honest, this journey has asked a lot from you. It's cost you companionship. It's given you evenings where the silence felt almost unbearable. It's made you answer uncomfortable questions from people who treat being single like something that needs to be explained. It's even taken away the temporary comfort of relationships that were never built to last. But maybe you've been looking at this season through the wrong lens. This wasn't punishment. It was protection. The woman you were becoming needed room to grow. She needed stillness. She needed the endless noise to fade so she could finally hear herself again. Yes, it's been quiet. But that quiet has been doing something meaningful. You haven't simply been waiting for love to arrive. You've been finding your way back to yourself. Every time you refused to return to someone who only loved you halfway, every time you ignored the late-night message that once would have made you feel temporarily important, every Friday night you honored your own boundaries instead of settling for loneliness disguised as affection, you weren't standing still. You were choosing yourself. You were giving your heart permission to stop pouring into people who never poured back. You were making room for your soul to return home. The world may never applaud this kind of strength, but one day, the woman you've become will. Stay with me, my friends, because this is where everything begins to change. This is where longing transforms into power. Eventually, a quiet day arrives when you notice something different. You can't even say exactly when it happened. You simply wake up and the ache isn't there anymore. Not because you've buried it, not because someone finally chose you, but because you stopped searching outside yourself for the light that had always existed within you. What once felt like constant hunger, the desperate need to be wanted, admired, or chosen by someone who barely knew your heart begins to disappear. You no longer reread old conversations hoping they'll return. You stop waiting for someone else's attention to make you feel alive. Instead, your desires become clearer. You don't want to be pursued for the sake of excitement. You want someone capable of meeting you where you truly are. You don't need another person to complete you. You want someone who recognizes that you're already whole. This is the turning point. Your craving becomes discernment. The attention that once felt irresistible now feels empty if it lacks sincerity. You stop asking, do they want me? Instead, you ask, can they truly appreciate the woman I've become? This is real transformation. Carl Jung described it as transmutation, the process of turning pain into wisdom and strength. You didn't merely survive the silence. You allowed it to reshape you. You didn't just spend time without love. You redefined what love should actually feel like. Now, you're no longer searching for temporary sparks. You're looking for genuine harmony. Someone whose presence doesn't just excite your emotions, but encourages your growth. The old version of you chased validation. The woman you are now seeks alignment. The old version constantly needed proof that she was enough. Now, your life has become that proof. If people tell you you've changed, smile and accept it. They're right. You've changed from feeling empty to living from abundance, from chasing attention to choosing wisely, from searching for warmth in others to becoming a source of warmth yourself. Stay with me, my friends, because we're arriving at one of the greatest lessons of all, the unexpected strength that comes from not always being chosen. Rejection isn't always life shutting a door in your face. Sometimes it's God gently steering you away from the wrong path because something far greater is still being prepared. Let that sink in. This is where old wounds stop controlling you and begin teaching you. For years, you wondered what was missing. Why people admired you from a distance but never truly committed. Why they praised your qualities only when it suited them, yet never showed up with the consistency your heart deserved. You kept wondering why someone else was chosen instead. Maybe she seemed louder, softer, easier, or simply different. And you were left asking why it was never you. But what if you've been looking at those moments the wrong way? You weren't passed over because you were missing something. You were passed over because you were never meant to fit everywhere. The world doesn't always know what to do with a woman who refuses to perform just to earn love. So maybe it's time to stop mourning every rejection. Maybe you should be grateful for it, because every closed door was guiding you away from a life that would have required you to become less than who you truly are. Every disappointment was quietly saying, not here, not this, not a life where you're only half loved. You were never created to be someone's backup plan or convenient option. You were created to be fully recognized for who you are. Here's the beautiful part. A woman who learns to stand firmly through seasons of rejection becomes incredibly difficult to shake. Not because she closes herself off, but because she finally discovers her own completeness. Empty emerald no longer tempt her. Small pieces of affection no longer satisfy her. Temporary attention no longer controls her choices. She no longer settles for almost. She walks with confidence because she knows exactly what she's worth. Some people may call her intimidating. That's often what genuine confidence looks like to those who've never seen a woman who doesn't need approval to shine. So hear this clearly. You weren't rejected. You were protected. You were prepared. You were positioned for something better. And when the right relationship enters your life, it won't leave you guessing. It won't hide behind mixed signals or uncertainty. It will be honest, mutual, peaceful, and unmistakable. Stay with me, my friends, because this is where the journey comes full circle. You aren't returning to the world searching for love anymore. You're returning as someone who has become love. The woman who once questioned herself after every unanswered message, who wondered if she wasn't enough after every disappointing connection, who spent nights feeling invisible. She's coming back, but not as the same person. She no longer walks into life carrying desperation in her eyes or emptiness in her heart. She walks in already full. Not the kind of fullness that demands attention, the kind that quietly changes the atmosphere the moment she enters a room. She isn't searching for someone to complete her because she no longer believes she's incomplete. She's already whole. If love arrives now, it meets a woman whose question is no longer, will you choose me? Instead, she asks, can you meet me where I already stand? That's what true return looks like. You don't come back as the version of yourself that pleaded for validation. You return knowing that being truly seen begins with seeing yourself. You stop reshaping your personality to fit someone else's expectations. You stop accepting crumbs and pretending they're enough. You nourish yourself with truth. You strengthen your roots during the quiet seasons, and eventually you bloom whether anyone is watching or not. If love enters your life now, it isn't a reward for suffering or a prize for waiting. It's a meeting between two whole people. It isn't there to fill emptiness. It's there because there's already abundance. People may say you've changed. They're right. The woman who survives the loneliness of feeling unseen never returns unchanged. She doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she chooses. She no longer waits for the world to discover her because she's already discovered herself. And when she loves now, she does it with clear eyes, steady hands, and a heart that no longer fears standing alone. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Love by Matt if you've ever felt unseen but believed there had to be something greater waiting for you. Because this isn't an ending, it's a return. And a woman who returns to herself doesn't ask for permission to take up space. She naturally does. If you've ever felt overlooked, unheard, or unchosen, remember this. Those moments were never proof that you weren't enough. They were preparing you for the person you were becoming. You aren't broken. You're being rebuilt. And when you rise from the silence, you won't come back searching for love. You'll come back living it. If these words reached your heart, like this video, subscribe for more conversations that honor your depth, and share this message with another woman who's finding her way back to herself. The world doesn't need more women pretending to be perfect. It needs more women who are fully awake. Stay grounded, keep shining, and I'll see you in the next one.